So a lot of women are going through perimenopause in their mid 30s, but the media out there and the majority,
I was one of them.
the narrative is, oh, it's in your 50s. BS is what I call, because I started menopause at 36 and I was completely flabbergasted that it was happening, and I was clueless.
This is so strange. We are living parallel lives. I was 36 when I started as well, so this is very, very odd.
Yes.
Hey, and welcome to the Forties Formula, your go-to place for insightful discussions on navigating the 40s and thriving in this transformative decade.
We're your hosts, Jasmin and Amanda, two women that are passionate about exploring the challenges and adventures that come with turning 40 and what lies ahead. So Terry, I cannot tell you the number of times that I've had women come to me in my coaching journey and say, I'm begging to lose weight. I'll do anything. But in your 40s, it's actually not that easy to do. But here you are, an entrepreneur who at age 42 embarked on a major weight loss journey, losing 80 pounds and discovering an untapped source of incredible physical and mental strength along the way. Welcome, Terry, to the 40s Formula.
Thank you, ladies, for having me. I'm super excited and very grateful and honored to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. I was thinking when I was, looking at Instagram and kind of studying a bit about your journey, one of my favorite quotes in fitness is, the heaviest weight in the gym is the front door, right? For so many women, the biggest thing to overcome is just actually getting started. How did you overcome that? How did you push that door, girl?
With every ounce of will and determination that I had. So, funny story, when I started working out at about 42, I received my program. I had a coach, and there were abbreviations in the program, things like RDL and DB and all these things. And for the life of me, I could not figure out what DB was. I had no idea. I had never picked up a weight in my life.
You're like, decibel? And it's funny. I mean, you say that and we can laugh, right? Because, you're sitting in a room of fitness and wellness professionals, but that lingo, right? Those abbreviations, those acronyms, that's a barrier to entry. It makes you feel like you're outside a world and you'll never get it, right? So, getting used to that type of stuff. I love that you worked with a coach. Obviously, as a coach, I have to love that. Can you tell me about the decision to employ a coach in the beginning?
Yeah, so at first, I tried to do it on my own, right? So I had done over 30 diets in my 10 years prior to that. I tried it all. You name it, I've done it. And then I decided that this is no longer working. None of these diets work. I'm going to make up my own thing. I made it up, right? And I was doing about 2.5 hours of Peloton cardio, and and I decided I was only going to eat salads all day. So I would make this huge giant bowl of salad, and I ate that all day, and I lost 30 pounds.
Wow. As you could.
But my biggest fear was that I was going to regain it, which was my past history. I had a lot of emotional eating issues. I was very overwhelmed, stressed, overworked, underfed, right? So super restrictive diets. Eventually, you go back to normal life, you regain it plus some. And I was determined. I said to myself, I am not going to gain this weight back. I'm actually, as a matter of fact, going to lose some more. So at that point, I was at about 180.
That's pounds for our listeners.
and I'm 5'3". And at that point, I had a friend who had just entered a bodybuilding competition, and she had a coach, and she had gone on stage. And so I started scrolling through Instagram, went down the rabbit hole, and I found one of the competitors that was on the stage with her who was offering a challenge. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to apply. I mean, I had never lifted weights before. I had zero expectation that I was even going to be accepted into this. And so I applied, and lo and behold, a month later, I get an email like, hey, you're in, and we're starting January 1st. And I had a big mind blowout.
Yep.
Because I had no clue what that meant. I was a complete noob. And that's how it all began in 2019.
Wow. Just a quick question, though. On December 31st, what was your mindset like? Like, what went through your head?
Knowing what was in the morning.
What was going to happen on the 1st of January?
Panic. And I was convinced that she would call me out as basically like an imposter. I had never worked out before. I had no idea what I was doing. And then when I started the program, I found out that a lot of the other girls were professional competitors, professional bodybuilders. They were not what, as I refer to myself as marshmallow back then. They were not marshmallows, and they were really serious. And I did not belong there, let me tell you.
But see, what's funny, Terry, is that from a coach, right? You are a coach's dream, a blank slate, a beautiful canvas ready to be painted with the correct ways of doing this, right? I think in coaching, so often we're dealing with unpacking what people have already learned, faultily, unfortunately, along their their 30 diets in 10 years. And you spend half your time unpacking and untraining and, undoing the old ways. You came in fresh, girl. And I bet your coach was so excited to have a client like you. And I think your message of, you feeling like an imposter, I think is powerful for others to hear that, in fact, clients like yourself are one of the best candidates for a coaching journey because you've got nowhere to go but up.
I agree with you as far as the training was concerned, and somewhat a little bit with the nutrition. I joke around and I say, I needed to have a PhD in nutrition to understand what macros were and how to put meals together. And I remember I had like 19 ingredients in one of my meals.
Oh my.
And my coach came back and said, no, you need like no more than 4. And I couldn't figure out how to do that. But with a lot of trial and error, eventually it kind of all came together. And that's when emotional eating hit me smack in the face. And I discovered that I had an eating disorder for probably my entire life that was undiagnosed. Of course, emotional eating is a self-diagnosed type of thing. And that's when change really began to happen for me. It wasn't necessarily in the training or even the nutrition, because I could white knuckle that up to a point, and then all hell would break loose once I encountered a challenge that got me emotionally unstable. So there were a lot of layers to this journey and a lot of levels to that you kind of have to keep progressing into the development of your mind, essentially.
Absolutely.
I always say it's weight loss. It's not just the food and the exercise. This whole mindset thing. You have to change what's going on in your mind. Otherwise, things won't change in the long run. You'll just always revert back to your old self. Amanda, you're going to love this. I just found out that the Meat Club have added a whole new range of protein snacks and supplements to their website.
Wait, what? I thought they just did the meat and the fish and that brand new range of fresh fruit and veggies.
They do, but now they've got things like grass-fed jerky, protein bars, and even bone broth. It's all packed with nutrients that are perfect for a quick and healthy snack.
Okay, that is exactly what I need for the days when I'm running between clients and recordings and kids.
Exactly. Do you know what I love the most? Is the Chief Collagen Protein. I just stick it in my coffee to help with not only my skin, but healing my gut with all that glycine.
Okay, so I just need to jump over to www.themeatclub.com.sg and check out their full range of protein snacks and supplements.
Yup, and you can save yourself 12% off your first purchase using code TFF12. And don't forget to follow them on Instagram at @themeatclubsg.
And they also offer a subscription service with the perks that are amazing. You can get up to 15% off your basket and even free mints for life on orders over $100. Plus, they offer over $160 worth of exclusive perks and give you the flexibility to edit your cart or change your delivery day anytime.
Now back to the chat. Like you, I've got a similar story. I went through every single diet in the book, but it was only when something changed in my brain that I no longer wanted to eat, sugary stuff. I didn't want to eat the crisps. I didn't want to eat chocolate. And that's when things started to fall into place. And it was like, oh, actually, I want to eat the protein. I want to eat the vegetables and I want to eat the good stuff. And I think until it's not a I can't have and it's more of a I don't want to have, that things won't necessarily feel right to you.
100%. And through this entire journey, I actually discovered that emotional starvation is worse than physical starvation or malnutrition in a lot of ways, because when I didn't take care of myself emotionally and I was not emotionally healthy, I did not want to do all the other things. I didn't want to train. I didn't want to eat properly. I didn't want to track. I just wanted to wallow in my own misery, in a sense. So until I stabilized that aspect, the emotional eating habit was always going to be there, because essentially I used food the same way I used alcohol and other substances to cope with my internal state. And that discovery was really a surprise, because I was in it for the weight loss, but I walked away with a completely different mindset of discovering traumas and things that I had picked up along the way that no longer served me. So it was a very cathartic type of experience.
And is that something that you went through solely with your coach, or is that something that you worked with a therapist on, or who was employed in kind of your wellness circle?
So not a great story, but I did end up finding a therapist, and I was counting macros at the time. I was training really hard. I was doing really well. I was really into it. And the therapist was a little bit against it for whatever reason. And so I kind of broke up with her and continued on my own.
And you figured it all out on your own?
I had to, because I feel like people have a lot of biases when it comes to food.
Yeah.
And they, believe certain type of rigidity or macros or a plan or structure may sometimes not really work for some people with emotional and eating disorders. But it was working for me. It gave me freedom to be able to understand and know that the food I was eating was actually properly fueling me, and that if I did experience hunger, that it made me question, was it physical hunger or was it emotional hunger? Because I knew that the food I was eating should have kept me full. So if I was looking for something else, I had to question why.
Oh, I love that you use the term freedom, because I think once you realize what it is that you're searching for, then you can definitely address the issues. But until you get to that point, you're not going to know. Like you said, you're sitting in front of the TV and you're like, oh, I fancy something. Are you really hungry, or are you bored? Are you stressed? What is it that is driving you to eat? Hey Amanda, you know how much I love clean home-cooked food? There's just something about knowing exactly what goes into your meal, right?
Yeah, but let's also be real. Sometimes it's just not possible to cook at home with our busy schedules.
I know, but that's why I've been loving Guzmini Gomez. They've taken fast food and they've made it healthy. You get fresh quality ingredients, all cooked from scratch, no processed stuff, just real food.
Oh, I love that so much. So even when I cannot cook at home, I don't have to compromise on eating clean.
Yep, and GYG offers everything from burritos, bowls and salads packed with fresh veggies, lean meats and wholesome grains, and no added preservatives or artificial flavors.
And the best part for me is that it is fast, so you're not stuck waiting forever for a healthy meal when you're already in a rush.
Yep, for me, I love that I can customize my own meal too. I'll have a burrito bowl, no rice, double protein. Yes, please.
Just head to your nearest GYG or order delivery with ease through their Instagram and social media platforms at no price markups. Trust me, it is the perfect solution when you want something quick, healthy, and delicious, because clean is the new healthy.
Sounds like a win to me. Now let's get back to the chat.
Yes, primary food, right? So the difference between primary food and regular food is the craving for intimacy, connection, love, happiness, joy, boredom, whatever it may be that may be driving you to consume physical food as a replacement for that emotion. And that was very eye-opening for me.
Yeah, I mean, that is so hard to do, though, Terry. I mean, you're talking about it so beautifully, and with such honest transformation. What tips could you give our listeners that struggle with exactly what you're talking about, which is they have the structural components of counting macros, or they have the structural components of working out, but they have not yet been able to tap into that emotional bit? What are some tips that you could give our listeners?
Well, the first one is give yourself some space to process your life. What are you feeling, right? Some of us don't even know what we feel on a minute-to-minute basis. We're completely disconnected with our essence of who we are, what we like, what we don't like. We're overwhelmed, right? So start removing things from your life that are unnecessary, that you're doing them out of obligation, you're people-pleasing, you're doing too much stuff and don't have enough time to process your midlife events that are occurring. And for a lot of us, those events happen a lot sooner than we expect. So a lot of women are going through perimenopause in their mid-30s, but the media out there and the majority...
I was one of them.
The narrative is, it's in your 50s. BS is what I call, because I started menopause at 36 and I was completely flabbergasted that it was happening, and I was clueless.
This is so strange. We are living parallel lives. I was 36 when I started as well, so this is very, very odd.
Yes. Yeah. So, you need space to process all these changes that are not only happening to you internally, hormonally, they're also happening to you in life. I mean, aging parents, young children, teenagers, more stress at work, all kinds of things, more bills, bigger mortgage, all of this stuff, right? And it's a perfect storm to kind of disassociate from yourself and be unhappy and be miserable because you're so disconnected. So give yourself the space to process it. And then the third thing is, give yourself the grace and the dignity to go through the process. It's not easy. People that make it sound like it's just 1, 2, 3, it's a light switch, or, one day you're miserable, the next day you're going to be happy. That's not really the case. It takes years to become a balanced, harmonious, grounded type of person, especially if you're going through menopause. So those are really my top tips, because get your training in, get your protein in, get your cardio in, get your nutrition. I think we've beaten that horse to death at this point.
Jasmin, there is so much information on gut health out there right now. And if we as nutritionists are tired of trying to wade through the oceans of probiotic strains and supplements to figure out what's best for our families, I imagine our listeners are too.
Oh, no doubt they are, which is why I love the simplicity and straightforward science of the berry, tropical, and ginger tonics from Akisi Wellness.
Akisi's prebiotic, probiotic, and postbiotic tonics combine all the good stuff. Active probiotic species, real fruit ingredients, and billions of good bacteria in a drink that you can actually feel confident is what your family needs for better health.
I actually love doing a quick shot of the ginger tonic to get my anti-inflammatory benefits after a big workout. Oh, and my kids will definitely love the sweeter tasting berry, which I love since they get all their polyphenol, brain, and digestive health benefits.
For me, it's all about that mango, passion fruit, pineapple, tropical tonic, packed with antioxidants and beta-carotene for my immune system. It's actually amazing mixed with some sparkling water as a healthy, tasty mocktail at the end of a long day of recording in studio.
Our Singapore listeners can get an exclusive 15% off and free shipping with all orders using the code Forties on akisiwellness.com.
That's Akisi Wellness, AKESI Wellness.com. And now, back to the show. Yes. And you're absolutely right. Those are all great tips, right? But, we always say it's like you can't build a house on a shaky foundation. So even if you got the columns of perfect nutrition, perfect workouts, great coaching, if you have not addressed the foundation of your issues, that house will fall. Might be a day and might be a month, might be a year, but it can't stand on a weak foundation. And I think, Terry, you've hit on two things that both Jasmin and I run into as coaches all the time, which is give yourself space and give yourself time, right? That these changes are not quick fixes. And unfortunately, social media gives us that impression that, if you see a before and after, the first thing you check is what's the time between, right?
Yeah, like how
12
long did
weeks,
it take?
14 weeks. Yeah, how many days, how many
Yeah.
weeks, how many hours people want versus like the actual years you just mentioned that it takes to make these sustained changes. And I think one way we're seeing that reflected in our culture is with the rise of Ozempic, right? The GLP-1 agonist drugs, and people saying, why would I do what Terry is doing? Why would I do this hard work, look at my emotions, unpack my childhood? Why would I do that when I can just inject? And, for women that might be considering that option, what's your opinion and what advice would you give?
Well, I know countless people that have had gastric bypass, gastric sleeve,
Sure.
taken Ozempic. If you don't change your habits, you will regain it. Plus, you're going to inherit a slew of other health conditions on top of that you didn't have before. So my question always is, when it comes to pharmaceuticals of any kind, have you exhausted every avenue? Have you done everything you possibly can, holistically, mentally, emotionally, physically? Have you looked at your movement patterns throughout the day, your nutrition, your mindset, your emotions, your life, your job, all of these things, your sleep? What does your sleep look like? Have you exhausted every single avenue before you reach for the meds? Because the meds, you might have to be on them for the rest of your life.
And that's the thing. Anyone can lose weight, but it's keeping it off. And until you address the underlying emotions and the underlying reasons why you gained weight in the first place, you won't be able to sustain it.
Exactly. 100%. Almost every story that I hear about Ozempic or any of the gastric sleeves, people always regain the weight back because their behaviors and their habits and their mindset did not change. It was just a Band-Aid. And I'm not necessarily against it, because a lot of people may need that bridge in time in order to change their habits and behaviors, but that should not be a permanent solution, in my opinion.
I like how you phrase that, Terry, a bridge in time. And because that's really what those GLP agonists can be for some people, of course, right, is giving them a little bit of a bit of hope, right? Yeah. A bit of time to see a bit of success, where then they might be inspired to make those changes. But again, we'll all have to wait for the long-term data to see how that game pans out. There's so many reasons, Terry, that people are overweight, right? There's as many reasons for being overweight as there are overweight people. And in America, we know that that's about 70% of the population. So we're talking about a lot of folks. You are a coach, you lead wellness retreats, and you are speaking to our exact audience, which is women in their 40s. What are the most common reasons you see for women in their 40s being overweight?
Sugar.
Oh, one word, I like it.
We're consuming fructose in everything we eat. So we've become completely disconnected with our own food. We're consuming things in a box, a container, a bag, a package. Even foods that are labeled as healthy foods are full of fructose. So when we're overeating, in that sense, we're overeating sugar and fructose and corn syrup and all of these things. What is the body going to do with all that excess amount of calories? It's in everything, right? So we've gotten away from cooking at home. We've gotten away from purchasing whole foods, where we don't even know what half the ingredients are in the packages. We're extremely overwhelmed, stressed, busy, and we've disconnected from our true nature. So the fact that it's happening on such a large scale, it's not an individual thing if it's happening literally to 70% of the United States population. So there is a systemic issue, which is very unfortunate in my opinion.
Yeah, and you've hit on something, Terry. You mentioned sugar, you mentioned fructose, you mentioned, carbohydrates generally. And here in Singapore, we have a much lower incidence of obesity and overweight, right? We have a genetically smaller population, lighter population. However, we have a rampant prediabetes and diabetes problem. And we see it at the gestational level with pregnant women here. Almost 1 in 3 develop gestational diabetes in the Asian population. We're seeing 1 in 5 after age 65 will develop diabetes type 2 in their older age. So sugar is definitely an issue that kind of spans whether you're heavy or not heavy, right? This is something that is a bigger issue. Can you share some of the dietary changes that you made to overcome the sugar problem?
The dietary changes I made, I crowded it out essentially. And it wasn't a conscious thing. I, at that time, did not know what I was doing because I was being coached. But in 2019, I had my doses, right? I had my dosage of food every 3 hours. I was supposed to eat X amount of protein, X amount of carbs, and X amount of fats. Now, the location of the starchy carbohydrates was always right around workout times. At that time, I did not understand that that was very strategic as well. And so I had to meet these requirements every 3 hours, just like medication. I was dosing every 3 hours, certain amount of protein, certain amount of carbs, certain amount of fat. And I was so full with real food. I couldn't look at any more food because when I first started out, my caloric intake was supposed to be 1,500 calories of this type of structured eating. And I remember about 3 weeks in, my coach got suspicious and she said, "Are you eating all your food?" And I was like, "Oh, no, I can't. It's too much food." I could not get it all down. It was too much protein. And so I discovered that, obviously what I was eating prior to beginning this lifestyle was pints of ice cream and cookies and stuff that.
And there's your 1,500 calories in one pint of ice cream.
Right.
And it's funny because it's the hyperpalatable foods are so easy to overconsume that you don't realize that you're getting more calories out of it and the satiety is not there. So then you end up eating more overall. But then, like you just said, when you're eating more protein and strategic carbs and your fats, actually getting in 1,500 calories of those types of macros is so much harder because they fill you up. And that's the difference between the hyperpalatable processed pints of ice cream and chocolate and sugar and prepackaged food in comparison to your lean proteins and vegetables and avocados and fats that you'll be taking.
Yeah. And you just, to circle back to what we just talked about with Ozempic and GLP-1 agonists, people think that Ozempic, Saxenda, Wegovy, whatever, these ones are, that it's a medicine, right? I'm injecting some foreign medicine into my body. GLP-1 is a hormone we all secrete. It is something that we all actually produce. And how do we produce it? When we eat protein. And what does GLP-1 agonist do? It induces satiety. So let's put those two together, right? Eating protein induces satiety. We can create that effect in our own diets, and you're living proof.
100%. And so the more you crowd out sugar with real food, the less hungry you are. And it doesn't take a pint of ice cream to fill you up. You could have 1 or 2 teaspoons and you're good.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. I like the idea of crowding it out, right? Crowd out the noise with the real nutrition.
Yeah.
That is such a powerful message. I think that, speaking of power, right? So obviously eating protein, that's a strategic element nutritionally. But circling back to mindset, which will always be the most powerful element, you said that your journey was both physical and metaphysical, and that you had to change your energy to change your life. Can you tell us during that process, how did you change your energy? How did you make it metaphysical? I think people like to have kind of touch points to grab onto in those concepts, and I feel like you'd be a great person to speak to that.
So the best way that I can describe it is every day that I put the work in, every day I showed up for myself. Every day I kept my promise. Every day I shed another few ounces, or every week I shed another pound and gained muscle. My physical body was different. My cells were different. I was creating and building new cells. And those new cells were born in an energy of positive thoughts, positive actions, positive direction. There was hope. I was inspired to make these changes. So when my body was changing physically, it was being birthed essentially into a very different energetic field that I was creating with my actions. And so everything that happened after that is a result of that energy I was creating. I was pushing myself into the positive spectrum, not necessarily with, some type of woo-woo statements or comments or sayings or, any of that. But I was literally going through the process in a very authentic, honest way. I was struggling. I was continuing to struggle, but I wouldn't quit on myself this time. And so everything was born in that kind of chaotic mess I had going on, and just continued to progress in that sense. So when I say I changed metaphysically, I literally did. I changed physically and energetically at the same time.
Do you know what I'm visualizing here? I'm visualizing like this superhero rebirth, like this energy just like pouring out, like this light energy just pouring out of you. Yeah, that's just incredible. I just love that message. And I think having those positive vibes is something that everyone going on a transformative journey needs, because that's the light and the hope that's going to get you through.
Yeah. But I also love, because you said you thought superhero, I thought Care Bear, right?
Oh,
like the Braveheart energy coming out. But it's also important that you use the word struggle, Terry, because this, I think, is a really key point, that when people start off a journey, they are filled with positivity, hopefully, right? They are so excited to start this new thing. The training plan is shiny and new, and the nutrition looks cool, and let's give it a try. My meal plan is, first time I'm seeing these new meals. But then the struggle hits. It's my 100th deadlift. It's my 60,000th chicken breast. It's my 16th night in a row of saying, sorry guys, can't go out. I got to get to bed by 9 p.m. It's in the drudgery that people start to struggle. And I think that hearing you say that you can overcome that by continuing to use positivity in that journey, even when the struggle is tough, is so important. I think of one of the best quotes that I know from Brad Stolberg, which is, the goal is the path, and the path is the goal. It's not dissimilar, right? The journey that you're on is actually what you want. And by acting, you stay on it. And I love that you were, able and willing to make those changes. I want to circle back a bit to the wellness retreats that you lead for women. We always talk about how there is no quick fix, right? And there is no 30-day plan. But I think there is value in making space, right? Taking time away from your real life to kind of do some work. Can you talk about what you do with your wellness retreats with women in their 40s?
Absolutely. So we spend sometimes 4, sometimes 5 days in the mountains of Tennessee, in the Smoky Mountains, on a 50-acre property in the Cherokee National Forest. And we basically, the only thing that we do is we do yoga in the morning. We have a macro-based lunch. We strength train. We go on hikes. We have dinner. We do another restorative yoga class, and we sleep. And then we repeat that every day.
I want to go on this holiday.
My mind is there with you, Terry. I want to be there. My body wants to be there.
Oh, that sounds perfect.
Yeah, that is beautiful. And do you have, women that go through kind of emotional changes during that time?
Every time. And something that's really interesting that happens, that I'm always blown away by this. Women come there from all over the United States, and they don't know each other when they pack their suitcases. And every once in a while, we all come out in the same color.
Wow.
Or matching colors.
That synchronicity we were just talking
amazing.
about.
Yeah. Or coordinating colors, and, pink, white, pink, white, pink, white. And I'm like, how did you guys do that? I have no idea how it happens, but
it's vibes, girl.
Yeah.
There's a synchronicity. There's also a lot of groups that have really uncharacteristic things in common that are very obscure, and they discover all these things, and they become connected for a long time. There's chats going on and group chats, and people are very encouraging and inspiring. And it's so cool because a couple of weeks ago, I had an ultra marathon runner who does 100-mile marathons. I was just, she is a queen. And
oh my God. And again, for our listeners, 100 miles is like a lot of kilometers. Okay? It's way more than 100 kilometers.
yes.
Well, it's funny that you just mentioned that, by the way, because, in the beginning of this interview, you were talking to us about how you had to do a lot of work alone, right? You did work with a coach, you tried a therapist, but in the end, it was really you. But then with these retreats, obviously, the community aspect is so huge. Can you talk about how women can go about finding a community if they are struggling to do it on their own?
So when I was working with my coach, and I still have a coach, by the way, there is a community aspect to it. And there are other teammates that are also being coached by the same coach. And I firmly believe that was the secret sauce to my success, was the community and the support that I gained from this experience, because we were all in a way in this boot camp together. And we were all starting at the same time. We were all doing all these things together. And despite the fact that I may not have been at their level, or someone was further along, or I was further along, it didn't really matter. We all kind of worked together and cheered each other on. And so the retreats are a very similar type of experience, because from all walks of life, women come with all kinds of levels of fitness and with all kinds of different challenges that they've faced in the past or currently are facing. And they get to feel like they're not alone in this, because I think that feeling of loneliness and disconnection is a lot of times what causes us to kind of give up, because we feel like it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. There's, it's just me, right? And so that's a very common story that I hear a lot.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right, that there's a level of individual resilience that you have to develop, right? We get it. Like, only you can lift the weight, right? Only you can put the food in your mouth. But at the end of the day, there has to be a community of somebody that understands and supports you. If you want to make a change, surround yourself with people that are living that change. You want to, and avoid the opposite, by the way. Avoid those who are detracting from your journey. That's definitely not the people you want to be around. And in terms of the community of women, the broader community of women, I want to transition a bit into thinking about not women in our 40s necessarily, but our daughters. You went through this incredible weight loss journey literally in front of your daughter, right? I mean, she is cognizant of age, watching you go through this. How did you talk about the changes you were making with her? And what tips can you give moms that struggle to have weight-positive conversations with their daughters around food and movement and health?
I never really talked about it directly. I just did it. I did it. There was really no conversation while I was doing it about what I was doing, why I was doing it. It was, I never really called myself fat, and I was never using language that was derogatory towards myself, really, ever. I joke around about it. It's, as a matter of fact, like, yeah, I was fat. But as I was wearing that body at the time, I never really said those things out loud, because I just don't think that was really necessary. It was obvious what was happening. But she did watch me weigh my food. She did watch me make different types of foods. She did notice that I wouldn't eat takeout anymore. There was less and less takeout. I wasn't eating the pizza, and I was eating something else. And, she's currently 16 years old. So that was about 5 years ago. She was 11. And the outcome is that almost 17, she's going to be 17 in September. The outcome is that she loves going to the gym. She loves lifting weights. She can do macros better than me.
That's incredible that she kind of,
she
she used your example as educational.
Yes. Yes, and she has an app, and she asked me because she trains for soccer, and they have nutritional requirements. Obviously, if you're weightlifting and strength training, it's very important that the coaches in high school tell her that it's important to eat enough protein, to have enough fuel, to be able to withstand 2-hour training sessions for training season and games and things like that. So she asked me, she said, "Can you show me how to track my macros?" And so I gave her the app, and she was literally, it took a day. And I was like, wow, that took me a year.
That's amazing that they're encouraging her to eat more food to support her nutritional, her energy requirements, rather than, her thinking, oh, I need to stop eating or I need to reduce my calories. Because I think there was, especially when we were growing up, there was always this fine line, wasn't there, of you can't eat too much. Whereas I feel like the fact that now people are, and kids especially, are training and they're exercising and they're playing sports, their energy requirement is so much higher that they need to ensure that they're getting enough of the macros and enough of the energy in so that they can sustain their goals.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, there are many, many different opinions on giving tracking tools to adolescents and teenagers, right? And this is not the purpose of this entire podcast episode. But Terry, I think you've pointed out something really important. I do a lot of work with teenage athletes. That's one of my kind of outreach groups that I work on here in Singapore. And I am constantly encouraging parents to educate themselves in those tools to get what I call nutrition literate. Like you said, what's a macro? I bet a lot of our listeners don't quite even know what it is, or couldn't drop what they are. There's 3 of them, by the way: protein, fats, and carbs.
4 if you include alcohol.
4 if you include non-nutritive, absolutely. But point being, it's like we need to be nutrition literate so that we're aware of some of the deficiencies that our kids might be facing, especially if they're highly athletic. We talk a lot in my presentations about RED-S, relative energy deficiency in sport. But you don't know if you have an energy deficiency unless you know the energy intake. And this is why, when people say, I don't want my kid tracking because I don't want them getting obsessed with deficit. Well, you should definitely make sure that they get obsessed with minimums, meaning making sure that they're eating enough. And especially young girls, where we see, obviously, during pubescence, hormonal and bone density issues are the first, this is where they can emerge for the first time that will last the lifelong. So, I think, Terry, while some folks might say, wow, that's really intense that she taught her kid how to do macros, on the flip side, it's a way of educating your daughter. And it's great that she's using those tools to enhance her soccer career. That's awesome.
I love that you said that, because the first thing we did discover when she started using the tracker was how underfed she actually was.
You got
because she didn't know what she should eat and how much of it she should eat. And there's always this fear, right, that I'm eating too much. But essentially how that shows up on the field is that you're fatigued really quickly. You have zero energy and you can't perform. And then, people start looking for the most, out there answer, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? You're hungry.
Yes, your body's looking for fuel that is not there. That's what it is.
Right.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And, I've worked with kids in this capacity, like I said, for years. And I can count on one literal hand in hundreds, how many kids are actually overfed or overnourished versus those that are actually underfed, undernourished, or have, when we say undernourished, aren't meeting their nutrient requirements. So yeah, it's a far greater problem on the other side, believe me, especially for athletic kids. So, we've had a wonderful conversation here today, Terry, and your story, I'm sure, is inspiring and relatable for so many women. And I thank you for being candid with some of your struggles. What would you consider to be your 40s formula? You started this journey in your 40s, you finished it in your 40s. What is kind of the nuts and bolts of what you can tell women to achieve similar results in their 40s?
Cut out the stuff you don't want to be doing anymore, right? So there's a lot of women transitioning from the workplace because they don't want their energy drained in places where they're not being appreciated. Don't be afraid to make bold, drastic changes. Sometimes it takes 40 years, 45 years, whatever that is, to discover what your actual purpose in life is, to discover what you're meant to do. And each one of us has a gift that we can bring to the world And maybe now is your time. So if you feel that pull towards a different calling, don't be afraid. The universe will help you if you're properly aligned with that. That's number two. I see that a lot. A lot of women spend the majority of their lives being miserable, and that creates a cascade of other problems that are health related. And the third is take care of yourself now, because when you're 60 years old, when you're 80 years old, when you're 100 years old, you're going to look back at this time and be grateful that you took a pause, you took care of yourself, you changed what you had to change, and you're going to live a healthy, happy, fulfilled, content life rather than live a life with regret.
Oh, girl, I love it. Cut what is not serving you anymore. Do not be afraid to make the big and drastic changes that you need, and do it now. Your future self will thank you.
Yep.
Terry, we have loved having you on the podcast today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your experience, and again, your journey. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
After talking to our amazing guests all day in studio, we need a good drink to refocus, and let's be honest, we could use a dash more energy too.
Oh, I totally feel that. But so many energy drinks out there are packed with sugar and so much caffeine that you end up crashing hard.
That's actually why I switched over to Flojo, Asia's first productivity drink. It hits the sweet spot for me between needing a little bit of a boost, but not wanting to chug a bunch of caffeine. And Flojo actually has 80% less caffeine than your average coffee with no added sugar.
I also love that Flojo is a functional health drink. It has 7 organic nootropics and adaptogens, things like reishi mushroom for a strong immune system and rhodiola for mental resilience. But the fruit and tea flavors are still light and fresh, not weird.
Flojo actually helps me stay calm and in control, so when I get home after work, I can just be immediately present with my family, not all jacked up and jittery like I might feel after a later day coffee.
Even better, they offer a 14-day money-back guarantee, so you can try it without any worry.
And you can get free shipping when you order directly from their website at www.drinkflojo.com.
Guys, you know how much we love coffee. And if you want to show us some love, you know you can get us one.
Just visit buymeacoffee.com/the40s formula. Cheers. Before we go, please remember to hit subscribe and take a moment to support the 40s formula by leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform.
Your reviews will help us to reach more people and allow us to continue to bring valuable content. It should only take a moment, and it's a free way for you to support the show.
You can also stay updated with the 40s formula by following us on Instagram at the 40s formula, all one word. We share behind-the-scenes insights, episode updates, and much more, so please be sure to hit that follow button.
We appreciate your time and support. Thank you for being part of this community, and we'll be back next week for more empowering conversations with inspiring guests.
Bye.
Bye. Terry, whereabouts in the States are you right now?
New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Wow.
Are you anywhere near Montclair? That's where one of my best friends lives.
Yes, actually about, I would say 30 minutes from Montclair.
Wow, okay. And again, I've never been to Montclair, and mind you, but I know that that's where she moved after she left the city, or left the main city, I guess.
Yeah, it's a very pretty area.
Oh, it looks beautiful, and I know what I know about is that I know that you have all the resources there. You know, you've got the Rutgers Institute there to do all your metabolic testing. It's a wonderful place health-wise to live, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
I've never been.
Yeah, Jersey?
Yeah, no, I've been to New York, Manhattan, but never to Jersey. Maybe there's a place I need to visit.
Yeah. Are you a recovering New Yorker, Terry?
Yes, I am. So I lived and worked in New York for probably about 15 years. and then migrated to New Jersey. So I am what you call bridge and tunnel people.
Yes, you are. I didn't say it, you said it.